I found my wife's earring in a truck that wasn't mine at 11:40 on a Tuesday night. And for about 5 full seconds, I actually convinced myself there had to be some harmless explanation for it. I was standing in the parking lot behind the restaurant where my friend Nate had asked me to meet him for a late drink. The kind of last-minute text guys send when they say, "You up?" and mean, "I don't want to be alone." He was running late, so I leaned against the truck beside mine, fumbling for my keys, and that is when I saw it glinting near the passenger seat rail through the open door. Small gold hoop, tiny diamond chip on the clasp, bent just enough at the hinge for me to recognize it instantly because I was the one who paid to have it repaired last winter. My chest went cold so fast it felt like I had been hollowed out. I remember just staring at it while the cook from inside dragged trash bags to the dumpster behind me, and all I could think was, no, not here. Not like this. Not in my best friend's truck. I wish I could say my marriage had been perfect before that moment, but the truth is it had been quietly slipping somewhere I could not reach for months. Lauren had become careful in a way that did not feel innocent. She started turning her phone face down even when nobody was around. She stopped asking how my day was, but somehow had endless energy for people outside the house. If I walked into the room, she would smile too fast and say, "You scared me," with this little laugh that never reached her eyes. 3 weeks earlier, I had asked why she suddenly needed to clear her head every Thursday night, and she looked me dead in the face and said, "Maybe I just need one part of my life that you don't interrogate." I actually apologized. That is the part making me sick now. I apologized because I thought maybe I had become insecure. Maybe work stress was making me suspicious. Maybe a decent husband gives his wife room to breathe. Standing in that parking lot with her earring in Nate's truck, all I could hear in my head was her voice from 2 nights before saying, "I hate that you don't trust me," like I had done something cruel by noticing she had changed. I picked up the earring with my hand shaking so badly I nearly dropped it, and right then Nate's truck lights flashed behind me because he had unlocked it from across the lot. He saw me standing there with the door open and his whole face changed before he even reached me. It was quick, just a flicker, but it was enough. Surprise, then fear, then this ugly forced annoyance like I was the one crossing a line. He said, "Man, what are you doing?" And I held the earring up between 2 fingers and asked him, as calm as I could, "You tell me." He did not answer right away. He looked at the earring, then at me, then away, and that silence said more than any confession ever could. When he finally spoke, he gave me the weakest lie I have ever heard in my life. "Bro, Lauren asked me to help her pick up that bookshelf from her sister's place last week. She must have dropped it then." He said it too smoothly, too rehearsed, like the explanation had already been built and waiting on a shelf somewhere. I asked him why my wife never mentioned being with him, and he gave a little shrug and said, "I don't know, man. Maybe because she knew you'd make it weird." That sentence did something to me. Not just the lie, but the way he said it. Like the real problem here was my reaction. Like I was some unstable husband creating drama where none existed. I called Lauren right there in front of him. She answered on the 3rd ring, voice breathless, and before I could even speak, she said, "I told you I'm at Melissa's. Why do you keep checking on me?" I looked Nate straight in the eye and asked, "That's strange, because I'm standing next to Nate's truck holding your earring." There was this silence on the line so complete I could hear traffic half a block away, a bottle breaking somewhere in the alley, Nate muttering, "Come on, man," under his breath like I was embarrassing him. Then Lauren finally spoke, and her voice came back sharp, cold, controlled. "Do not do this in public," she said. "Go home, now. We'll talk when I get there." I asked one question before she could hang up. I said, "From Melissa's or from him?" And she whispered something that made my stomach drop so hard I thought I might actually hit the pavement. She said, "You have no idea how bad this really is." I do not remember getting into my car after she said that. I just remember flying through red lights with my hands locked so tight on the steering wheel they were cramping, replaying those 7 words over and over until they stopped sounding like a warning and started sounding like a threat. When I got home, the house was dark, except for the kitchen light she always left on over the sink. And for one insane second, I had this stupid hope that maybe I had misunderstood everything. Maybe she was going to walk in and tell me there was some humiliating but harmless explanation, and I would hate myself for doubting her. Then I saw her laptop sitting open on the dining room table, which never happened because Lauren guarded that thing like it held state secrets. And beside it was the mug I bought her on our first anniversary with a crack running down the side because I had dropped it last month, and she said, smiling, "It's fine, I still want it." That stupid cracked mug on that quiet table nearly broke me more than the earring did because it looked like our whole marriage sitting there, familiar and damaged and pretending it could still hold something. She came in 6 minutes later without Melissa, without panic, without even trying to look guilty. She walked through the front door like she was late to a meeting and annoyed I had made this necessary. Her hair was tied back, makeup a little smudged, and she looked at me sitting at the table with the earring in front of me and said, "I told you not to do this over the phone." I stood up so fast my chair scraped hard across the floor and asked her where she had really been. She rolled her eyes, and said, "I was exactly where I needed to be, because clearly I cannot breathe in this house without filing a report." I asked her if she had been with Nate, and she did this cold little laugh I had never heard before and said, "You want the answer that fits the drama in your head, or the truth?" I said, "Try me," and she stepped closer, lowering her voice like she was calming down a child. "The truth is that you have been paranoid for months, and now you're clinging to an earring because you need proof that your misery belongs to someone else." I stared at her because that was the moment I understood she had prepared for this. She was not improvising. She had an entire version of reality loaded and ready, and in that version I was unstable, controlling, impossible, the man who forced her into secrets by asking simple questions. I reached past her and tapped the laptop screen. "Then unlock your phone." Her jaw tightened for the first time. It was small, but I saw it. She crossed her arms and said, "No." Just that. No explanation, no outrage, just refusal. I asked why, and she said, "Because I am done rewarding this behavior." Rewarding. Like honesty was some luxury I had not earned. I told her if there was nothing there, this was the moment to prove it, and she came right up to me until we were almost chest to chest, and said, very quietly, "You really think you're the victim here because you found one thing and let your imagination do the rest." Then she looked at the table, looked back at me, and said something I still hear in my sleep. "You should be a lot more careful before you start digging, because there are things in this house that can ruin more than me." I wish I had ignored that and walked out. I wish I had gone to a hotel, called a lawyer, called anybody. Instead, I asked her what that meant, and she gave me the kind of smile people give right before they pull a fire alarm. "Open the laptop," she said. "Go ahead." My stomach turned. "What's on it?" I asked. She tilted her head and said, "Something that makes tonight a lot less simple for you." I took one step toward the table, and that was when my phone started vibrating. It was a text from Nate, just one sentence, and the second I read it, my knees nearly gave out. It said, "Don't let her show you the folder before you hear my side." I read that message 3 times, like maybe the words would rearrange themselves into something harmless if I stared long enough. But they didn't. They just sat there heavy and deliberate. And for the first time that night, I felt something worse than anger, something quieter and more dangerous, like the ground under everything I believed had already given way, and I just hadn't hit the bottom yet. Lauren was watching my face when I looked up, studying me like she was waiting for a reaction she had already predicted. And I realized in that moment that whatever was in that laptop, whatever Nate was warning me about, it wasn't just about them. It was about me, too. I asked her, trying to keep my voice steady, "What folder?" And she gave a soft, almost pitying smile and said, "See, that's the problem. You don't even know where to look." Then she walked past me, sat down at the table, and slowly turned the laptop toward me like she was inviting me to sit across from her at some kind of trial. I didn't move right away. My phone was still in my hand, Nate's message burning against my palm, and I typed back, "What is she going to show me?" The 3 dots appeared instantly, disappeared, then came back again, like he was struggling to choose his words carefully enough to save himself. Lauren noticed the hesitation and let out a small breath through her nose. "You're really going to stand there texting him while I'm right here?" she asked, her tone sharp now, the mask slipping just enough to show irritation underneath. I said, "Funny how you suddenly care about honesty." And she leaned back in the chair, crossing one leg over the other like she was settling in. "I care about control," she said plainly. And that word hit me harder than anything else she had said all night because it was the first honest thing I had heard from her. My phone buzzed again, and this time Nate didn't dance around it. "It's not what you think, but it's worse if she explains it first," he wrote, and I felt this surge of rage so intense, I actually laughed under my breath. Because how does something become both not what I think and worse at the same time? How many layers of lies have to exist for that sentence to make sense? I looked at Lauren and asked her, "Have you been planning this?" And she tilted her head, pretending to consider it. "Planning what?" she asked, but there was a sharpness in her eyes now, something defensive coiling under the surface. "This," I said, gesturing between us, the table, the laptop, everything. The lies, the secrets, him, whatever that is. For a split second, just a split second, I saw something flicker across her face that looked like fear, and then it was gone, replaced by that same cold composure. "You give yourself too much importance," she said. "Not everything is about you." I finally stepped forward and sat down across from her, my heart pounding so loud I could feel it in my throat. The laptop screen was already open to a desktop with a single folder sitting in the center, plain, unremarkable, labeled with a name that made no sense to me at first. It wasn't hers. It wasn't mine. It wasn't Nate's. It was my younger brother's name. I felt my chest tighten as I looked up at her, confused and already dreading the answer. "Why is his name on your laptop?" I asked, and she didn't hesitate this time. She leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping into something almost gentle, almost sympathetic, and said, "Because you're not the only one who's been hiding things." Then she tapped the folder once with her finger and added, "Go on, open it. Or are you finally scared of the truth?" I remember my hand hovering over the trackpad like it didn't belong to me anymore. Like if I moved it even an inch, I would set off something that could not be undone. And the worst part was the look on Lauren's face. Because she wasn't nervous. She wasn't begging me to stop. She was watching me with this calm, almost patient expression like she had already accepted whatever came next, and I was the only one still pretending there was a version of this that didn't end badly. I asked her one more time, "Why is my brother's name on your computer?" And she leaned back slightly, folding her hands in her lap and said, "Because unlike you, he actually talks to me." That sentence landed in a way I wasn't prepared for, not because it answered anything, but because of how easily she said it. Like it was normal, like it was justified, like I was supposed to understand. I clicked the folder. At first, it didn't even look like anything incriminating. Just a list of files, dates, random names that didn't mean much on their own. But then I saw the thumbnails start to load and my chest tightened so fast I had to grip the edge of the table to steady myself. Screenshots, dozens of them. Conversations. My brother's name at the top of each thread. My wife's replies underneath. I opened the first one without thinking, and there it was, laid out in plain text, months of messages I had never known existed. It started harmless enough, casual check-ins, jokes about family dinners, small talk that looked innocent if you didn't stare too long. But the deeper I scrolled, the more something shifted. The tone changed, the timing changed. Late nights, longer messages, things that felt too personal, too familiar. I could hear Lauren's voice in the way she typed, the same rhythm she used when she talked, and seeing it directed at him made something in me twist. "Keep going," she said quietly, and I didn't even realize I had stopped scrolling. My hands were shaking now. Not just from anger, but from something heavier, something closer to dread. I opened another file. This one wasn't a screenshot. It was a saved conversation log. Longer, more detailed. Impossible to dismiss as something taken out of context. I saw my brother asking her how she was holding up, asking if I had figured anything out yet, and my stomach dropped so hard it felt like I had been punched. I looked up at her immediately. "Figured what out?" I asked, my voice already breaking in ways I couldn't control. She didn't answer right away. She just watched me, letting the silence stretch until it became unbearable. "Finish reading," she said. I looked back down, my vision blurring slightly as I tried to focus, and then I saw the message that made everything else in that room disappear. It was from her, sent weeks ago, late at night. "He's starting to notice things," she had written. "We need to be more careful." My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear myself think. I scrolled further, faster now, desperate and terrified at the same time, and that was when I saw my brother's reply. And the second I read it, I understood that whatever I thought this was, I had been wrong in the worst possible way. I read his reply once, then again, and by the third time the words stopped feeling like language and started feeling like something physical, like they were pressing down on my chest from the inside. "He doesn't suspect you," my brother had written. "He suspects himself. That's the safest place for him to be." I don't know what kind of sound I made when I read that, but it wasn't human. It was something cracked and hollow that came from a place I didn't know existed in me. I looked up at Lauren, and for the first time that night, I wasn't just angry or confused. I was afraid of her. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely holding together. She didn't rush to answer. She watched me absorb it, watched me unravel piece by piece, and then she said, almost gently, "This is what happens when someone pays attention." I shoved the laptop slightly, not enough to close it, just enough to create distance, like maybe if I put space between me and the screen it would stop being real. "You've been talking to him behind my back?" I asked. And even as I said it, I knew it sounded too small, too simple for what I was looking at. She tilted her head, considering me like I was asking the wrong question, which somehow made everything worse. "You're still trying to reduce it to something you understand," she said. "That's not going to help you." I felt my hands curl into fists on the table. "Then explain it to me," I said, louder now, my control slipping. "Explain why my brother is telling you how to hide things from me." She leaned forward slightly, her expression sharpening just a fraction. "Because he knows you," she said. "Better than you think." That answer hit me in a way I can't fully describe, because it wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about being studied, mapped out, predicted. I grabbed the laptop again and started scrolling, faster now, ignoring the way my vision kept blurring, and the deeper I went, the worse it got. Messages about my routines, about when I left for work, about how long I stayed at the gym, about which nights I was too tired to notice anything. I saw my own life reduced to patterns, turned into something they could navigate around, and I felt this overwhelming sense of exposure, like I had been living under a spotlight without realizing it. Then I saw another message from her, one that made my stomach twist in a completely different way. "He still trusts you," she had written to my brother. "That's the only reason this works." I stopped scrolling. My entire body went still. I could feel Lauren watching me again, waiting for the moment it landed. Slowly, I looked up at her, my voice quieter now, but heavier. "What works?" I asked. This time, she didn't answer right away. She stood up from the table, walked around behind me, and placed her hands lightly on the back of my chair, close enough that I could feel her presence without her touching me. When she finally spoke, her voice was right behind my ear. Calm, controlled, almost soothing in a way that made my skin crawl. "You're asking the wrong question again," she said. "You should be asking how long it's been working." I turned my head sharply to look at her, my heart racing, my thoughts scrambling to catch up, and that's when my phone buzzed again in my hand. Another message from Nate. I opened it without thinking, and the second I read what he sent, I realized he wasn't trying to protect himself anymore. He was trying to warn me. My hands were already shaking when I opened Nate's message, but what I read didn't just shake me. It pulled something loose inside me that I don't think will ever settle again. "She's not the only one lying to you," he wrote, "and I'm not the worst part of this." I actually let out this broken, disbelieving laugh because at that point it felt like reality had completely lost any structure. Like every answer just created a worse question underneath it. I turned slowly in the chair to face Lauren, who was still standing behind me, still too calm, still too composed for someone whose entire life should have been collapsing in front of her. "Who else?" I asked, my voice hoarse now, stretched thin from everything it had already carried. She didn't answer. She just stepped away from the chair, giving me space like she was inviting me to keep digging my own grave. I looked back at the laptop, back at the messages, and suddenly they felt different. Not just betrayal, coordination, layers. I scrolled up, slower this time, forcing myself to actually read instead of react. And that's when I started noticing the gaps. Entire stretches of time missing. Conversations that clearly continued but weren't there. References to things I couldn't see. "Delete that thread," my brother had written at one point. "He won't check the backups." Backups. My stomach dropped again. I looked at Lauren. "Where are the rest of them?" I demanded. She crossed her arms, her expression tightening just slightly, like I had finally caught up to something she didn't want me to. "You're looking at enough," she said. "No," I snapped, louder than I meant to. "I'm looking at what you want me to see." That hit something. For the first time, she didn't respond immediately. There was a pause, small but real, and in that pause I felt something shift, like I had stepped off the path she had carefully laid out for me. I grabbed the laptop and started digging through folders, ignoring her now, ignoring everything except the need to find whatever she thought she could control. "Stop," she said, sharper this time, but I didn't. I opened hidden files, searched names, keywords, anything, and then I found it. A folder buried under something generic, almost intentionally boring. It wasn't labeled with my brother's name. It was labeled with mine. My heart started pounding so violently I could feel it in my throat again. Slowly, I clicked it open, and this time, Lauren moved. Fast. Her hand slammed the laptop shut before I could see more than a flash of what was inside, but that flash was enough. My name at the top of a document. Bullet points, dates, notes. About me. About my habits. About my reactions. I shoved the laptop back open, anger exploding out of me now. "What is that?" I demanded, standing up so abruptly the chair tipped behind me. "What have you been writing about me?" Her composure cracked then, not completely, but enough. "You need to calm down," she said quickly, stepping back like I was the one becoming dangerous. "You don't understand what you're looking at." "Then explain it," I shouted, my voice echoing off the walls. "Because right now it looks like you and my brother have been documenting my life like I'm some kind of project." She shook her head, and for the first time there was something real in her eyes. Not guilt, not exactly fear, but something closer to urgency. "You're twisting it," she said. "This didn't start the way you think it did." "Then how did it start?" I fired back. She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything I needed to know. Before she could answer, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Nate. This one was longer, and the very first line made my entire body go cold. "Your brother didn't come to her first." My hands were already shaking when I opened Nate's message, but what I read didn't just shake me. It pulled something loose inside me that I don't think will ever settle again. "She's not the only one lying to you," he wrote, "and I'm not the worst part of this." I actually let out this broken, disbelieving laugh because at that point it felt like reality had completely lost any structure. Like every answer just created a worse question underneath it. I turned slowly in the chair to face Lauren, who was still standing behind me, still too calm, still too composed for someone whose entire life should have been collapsing in front of her. Who else? I asked, my voice hoarse now, stretched thin from everything it had already carried. She didn't answer. She just stepped away from the chair, giving me space like she was inviting me to keep digging my own grave. I looked back at the laptop, back at the messages, and suddenly they felt different. Not just betrayal, coordination, layers. I scrolled up, slower this time, forcing myself to actually read instead of react. And that's when I started noticing the gaps. Entire stretches of time missing. Conversations that clearly continued but weren't there. References to things I couldn't see. "Delete that thread," my brother had written at one point. "He won't check the backups." Backups. My stomach dropped again. I looked at Lauren. "Where are the rest of them?" I demanded. She crossed her arms, her expression tightening just slightly, like I had finally caught up to something she didn't want me to. "You're looking at enough," she said. "No," I snapped, louder than I meant to. "I'm looking at what you want me to see." That hit something. For the first time, she didn't respond immediately. There was a pause, small but real, and in that pause I felt something shift, like I had stepped off the path she had carefully laid out for me. I grabbed the laptop and started digging through folders, ignoring her now, ignoring everything except the need to find whatever she thought she could control. "Stop," she said, sharper this time, but I didn't. I opened hidden files, searched names, keywords, anything, and then I found it. A folder buried under something generic, almost intentionally boring. It wasn't labeled with my brother's name. It was labeled with mine. My heart started pounding so violently I could feel it in my throat again. Slowly, I clicked it open, and this time, Lauren moved. Fast. Her hand slammed the laptop shut before I could see more than a flash of what was inside, but that flash was enough. My name at the top of a document. Bullet points, dates, notes. About me. About my habits. About my reactions. I shoved the laptop back open, anger exploding out of me now. "What is that?" I demanded, standing up so abruptly the chair tipped behind me. "What have you been writing about me?" Her composure cracked then, not completely, but enough. "You need to calm down," she said quickly, stepping back like I was the one becoming dangerous. "You don't understand what you're looking at." "Then explain it," I shouted, my voice echoing off the walls. "Because right now it looks like you and my brother have been documenting my life like I'm some kind of project." She shook her head, and for the first time there was something real in her eyes. Not guilt, not exactly fear, but something closer to urgency. "You're twisting it," she said. "This didn't start the way you think it did." "Then how did it start?" I fired back. She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything I needed to know. Before she could answer, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Nate. This one was longer, and the very first line made my entire body go cold. "Your brother didn't come to her first." That sentence didn't just land. It detonated something inside me so completely that for a second, I genuinely lost track of where I was standing. She wasn't alone that night, and it wasn't me. I read it again, slower this time, like maybe the meaning would soften if I gave it space, but it only got heavier, sharper, more precise. I lifted my eyes to Lauren, and whatever she saw in my face made her step back without me even moving. That was new. That was the first real reaction she hadn't planned. "Who was it?" I asked, and my voice came out so calm it scared me more than if I had been shouting. There was no tremble, no break, just something flat and controlled, like I had finally crossed into a place where the truth mattered more than the damage it would cause. She shook her head immediately, too quickly. "You need to stop," she said, but it didn't sound like control anymore. It sounded like fear trying to hold itself together. "Who was it?" I repeated, slower this time, each word deliberate. She turned away from me, pacing once across the room like she was trying to outrun the moment, and then she stopped, her back to me. "You're not ready for that answer," she said quietly. And that was it. That was the final piece that snapped something into place inside me, because every lie she had told tonight had tried to make me feel small, confused, unstable. But that sentence did the opposite. It confirmed there was something real, something she couldn't twist anymore. "My brother didn't come to you first," I said, repeating Nate's words, watching her shoulders tense. "So who did?" Silence. I took another step forward, closing the distance between us. My heart steady now in a way it hadn't been all night. "You've been lying to me for months. You let me question myself. You let me apologize for things I didn't do. You let him—" My voice caught for the first time, just for a second, before I forced it back under control. "You let him stand next to me like nothing was wrong, so you don't get to decide what I'm ready for." She slowly turned back to face me, and what I saw on her face wasn't cruelty this time, or manipulation, or even anger. It was something heavier, something tired, like whatever she had been holding together was finally starting to crack under its own weight. Her eyes met mine, and for the first time that night, she didn't try to reshape the truth. "You remember your promotion dinner?" she asked softly. My stomach dropped. Of course I did. 6 months ago. The night everything still felt normal. The night she had told me she was proud of me. The night my family was there. My brother, my closest friend. Nate. I felt the air leave my lungs. Lauren took a slow breath, her voice barely above a whisper now. "That's where it actually started.